Hi guys, let's talk supplementary vote, and I suppose the good news to stress is that this is the last one we're going to look at, which has got to be a good news. The bad news is kind of complicated, but let's not worry too much about that. Now, the issue is we know that there are two particular problems manifest in the Westminster first past the post general election type thing. The first is that the outcome does not resemble the input. The second is that more people tend to vote against it than vote for it. So we've already dealt with all of these, so yeah, let's get rid of them. Because what we're going to focus on is the supplementary vote. And this is an attempt to get past this particular problem here, that more people vote against the winner than voting for the winner. Now, the issue is perhaps more acute at a national level, but we're going to look at it at a micro and a macro level. You know that more people vote against the winner than vote for the winner if we look at any sort of cursory results from the general election. Both the most egregious one there, we got 75.5% voting against Alistair MacDonald, and that's in Northern Ireland. But again, look at this. More than half of MPs were elected without more than half of the vote. So more than half of the House of Commons, greater than 50%, had less than half of the vote, which is really quite extraordinary. All those people in the House of Commons got less than half of the vote. And at a macro level, we know this as well. No party has come close to 50% of the popular national vote for at least 40 years. These are just some samples. Just for revision purposes, you can see how that relates here. This is, of course, proportion issues, but we're not talking about that, so let's get rid of it. There we go. So we've got rid of that, and we're focusing instead on this issue of a majoritarian system. Now let's have a look at that up close and personal. Here we've got a system where all of these guys here, all of this many votes here, did not vote for Alistair MacDonald. Anybody but Alistair MacDonald, they said. And again, we can see it manifest here. And yet, here he is. He wins with a majority of however many thousand that is, just under 1,000 by the looks of it. 906 even, if you want to look at the specific details. Doesn't matter. 906, one vote, 9,000 votes. Doesn't matter. You get one system, one winner, because all you need to do in our first past the post system is win by a single vote. You just need to get more votes than anybody else, and we can quite clearly see that that's exactly what Alistair has done here. He's got more votes than everybody else. The fact that if you add all of those together, they dwarf his total is entirely irrelevant. Well, it's not irrelevant, but it's moot in the context of this particular system. This is what it looks like at a macro level. This is our 50% mark, and we can quite clearly see here that no one really has got anywhere near that. Well, okay, these guys got near it, but they didn't certainly get across it. What we've been looking at in all of these governments here, really, more people voted against them than voted for them. So they're all coming in at healthily less than 50% of the vote. Now, at a macro level, the supplementary vote, majoritarian systems tend not to work particularly well. But at a micro level, they do return someone who kind of has the support of the absolute majority of the people. And the one that we use in the UK is the supplementary vote. And we only really use it in elections to mayors, which is why we've got this rich vein of comedy gold that is Boris Johnson running London at the moment. So how did he get there? Well, each voter gets one vote, but they get two preferences. And if there's no clear winner after the first round, then the two leaders go into a runoff, and all losing votes are reallocated according to second preferences. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point that this is not unrelated to the system at work in the Conservative Party in 1990. Now, you may remember that 1990 was the year that Mrs. Thatcher resigned. The thing was that in the first round, Mrs. Thatcher won. She got an absolute majority, but it was less than 50%. As a result of which they had to go into a second round, but that was considered to be really not sufficiently conclusive for her to hold on. She resigned, and Major came in, and after that everything was very, very different. But anyway, that's the Conservative Party. You don't really need to know how the Conservative Party elects its leaders, at least not at this point. It doesn't hurt you to know. They have, of course, changed it since then. But coming back to the election of the mayor, coming back to the supplementary vote, this is what you get. So you get a ballot paper like this, and then you might decide, well, she's going to get my first vote and he's going to get my second vote. This then gets chucked into the mix, and in the case of London, it looks rather like this. In the first first round, all votes are counted, and you wind up with a pattern like this. As we move into the second round, these wedges of cheeses basically go back into the mix, and they are reallocated according to any second preferences, which brings us out here. And we can quite clearly see that of that, Boris has got 51.5% of the vote. Now, ideally, your spider senses are going to be tingling away at this point because there's something that doesn't add up. And perhaps the best way of looking at that is by looking at the numbers and adding them up. So here we go. First round of voting. This is what happens. Now, if you voted for Brian as your first choice and Boris as your second choice, then what's going to happen is, as we move into the second round and all of these guys basically get reallocated, then your vote is going to switch from Brian to Boris. Of course, if your second choice, on the other hand, was Jenny Jones, then your vote is going to count for nothing. So this is what happened in London in 2012. We had the reallocation of votes. Interestingly, although more of those votes, significantly higher of those votes, accrued to Ken, it was not sufficient to defeat the juggernaut that was Boris, and he wound up with 1,054,000. Now, let's look at this. Last time I was at school, so that should be a 2 million. Oh dear me. Apologies. Half of 2 million is not 1,054,000. This is quite clearly less than 50% of the real total, and this is one of the problems with the first past the post system. We can see it again here. The total number of votes cast there is 2.4 million. 1.1 million is not half of 2.4. This is because it's a contrived majority. We have a clear winner, and we have a winner that's supported by more than 50%, but more than 50% of what? It's not really a full majority of all of the vast votes that were counted. It's what we might call a contrived or an artificial or a forced majority. Still, I suppose it's better than nothing, and if you did have a second choice, it might count for something, but there are still some votes that are wasted. It's a contrived majority at best, and it does lead to an increased polarization of the vote. These second choices become devalued because fundamentally you know that they're not going to win. Let me show you exactly how that works in practice. This is the London vote from 2000. This is the London vote from 2004, 2008, and 2012. Now, you should be able to see in these that this starts off a large slice of the pie. It's about the same size there, but by the time we get to this point, people are starting to realize that your second vote's kind of devalued, and by the time we get to here, it's shrunk still further. What that looks like if we put the numbers on it is 66, 66, 80 to 84. So this does not work to the advantage of third parties. All it does is it essentially accelerates the process towards a two-party state. Anyway, that's it. I'm sure you're going to have some questions for me. I look forward to answering them, and I'll speak to you then. Cheers. Bye now.